The room went quiet the second my son asked, "So, who's covering my car insurance now?" He said it with a smile, like it was a joke. It wasn't. I was standing there at my own retirement party, hands still smelling like lemon polish, and something inside me didn't break. It locked. "Hi, it's Grace. Glad you're here. I'll say this straight. Some kids don't cross a line, they erase it. And when that happens, silence is not weakness. Watch closely what she does next." I didn't answer him right away. I just looked at him, really looked, like I was trying to remember when exactly he stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as a monthly payment. The cake on the table said, "Happy Retirement, Mom," in crooked blue icing. I had picked it up myself that morning, along with the paper plates and those sad supermarket orchids nobody ever waters twice. 38 years cleaning other people's houses, and this was the celebration. Half my guests were people I had served, not people who had ever shown up for me. My daughter laughed first. Not loud, just enough to signal she didn't think it was a big deal. My daughter-in-law didn't even look up from her phone. My youngest shifted in his chair, eyes down, like he knew better, but didn't have the spine for it. And my son, he just kept standing there, waiting for an answer, like I owed him one. I smiled. That surprised them. "Well," I said, smoothing the front of my blouse like we were discussing the weather, "I suppose you'll figure something out." There it was. Small, calm, final. He frowned, confused. That wasn't how this usually went. Usually, I filled the gap. I fixed things before they even asked properly. Tuition, rent bridges, emergency repairs, groceries when things got tight, that insurance bill that somehow kept being temporary. I had built their lives like a quiet scaffolding, always there, never acknowledged. The music in the hall stuttered into some soft jazz track, something forgettable. I cut the cake myself. No speech, no toast, just plates sliding across plastic tables, forks scraping too loudly. Someone said, "Congratulations." Someone else asked if I'd miss keeping busy. I nodded at all of it, like a polite stranger. But inside, I was already gone. By the time I got home that night, the house felt different, not empty, finished. I took off my shoes, walked straight to the small metal box I kept in the back of the closet, and set it on the bed. Inside were years of my life reduced to paper, bank slips, insurance documents, copies of transfers I never talked about. Quiet proof of everything I had carried for them. I opened my notebook. Not the grocery one, the other one. Numbers, dates, names. I didn't cry. That part was over. Instead, I turned on the old lamp, sat down, and booked a one-way ticket to Portugal. Departure, 6:10 a.m. No checked bag. No return. At 3:47 in the morning, I changed my number while the rest of them slept. I didn't rush the packing. That's the first thing I noticed. I wasn't moving like someone escaping. I was moving like someone closing a door properly, one hinge at a time. I took a small carry-on from the top shelf, the one I used years ago when I still thought vacations were something I'd have more of. I folded 3 blouses, 1 dark cardigan, comfortable shoes, my documents, and the notebook. That notebook went in last, not because it was fragile, but because it was final. My phone buzzed once on the kitchen counter. My son. I let it ring. Then again. Then my daughter. I turned the sound off without even checking the screen. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. There was nothing new they could say tonight. I already knew the script. Confusion first, then irritation, then the soft manipulation wrapped in concern. "Mom, you're overreacting." We were just joking. Why are you making this into something it's not? I poured myself a glass of water and sat down at the table I'd paid off 12 years ago. The wood still had a faint scratch from when my youngest tried to carve his initials into it at age 9. I had laughed back then, sanded it smooth, fixed it. That's what I always did. Fixed. I opened my banking app. One by one, I started removing things. Not dramatically, not angrily. Just precisely. The monthly transfer to my son, gone. The temporary help for my daughter's rent, ended. The shared insurance coverage, terminated. A small account I had kept open just in case, closed. Each action took seconds. Each one erased something they had come to rely on without ever acknowledging. At 4:32 a.m., my phone lit up again. A message this time. "Mom, seriously, what's wrong with you?" I stared at it for a moment. Then I placed the phone face down. By 5:10, I was ready. The house was quiet in that early morning way that almost feels like it's holding its breath. I walked through each room once, not to say goodbye, but to make sure I hadn't left anything behind that still belonged to me. The answer surprised me. I hadn't. Everything important was already in that bag. The taxi arrived exactly on time. The driver didn't talk much, just nodded when I gave him the airport name. The sky was still dark. That deep blue just before morning decides to show itself. Halfway there, my phone started vibrating again. Over and over, calls stacking on calls. I didn't look. Instead, I watched the city pass by. Closed shops, streetlights flickering off one by one, a bakery already open with trays of something warm and golden behind the glass. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what needed to be cleaned, fixed, paid, or handled. I was thinking about nothing, and it felt unfamiliar. At the airport, everything moved smoothly. Boarding pass, security. A quiet corner near the gate where nobody knew me, needed me, or expected anything from me. That alone felt like luxury. I sat down, opened my notebook, and wrote one line. No more scaffolding. Then I closed it. When boarding was called, I stood up with everyone else, just another passenger with a small bag and a destination. No one there knew I had just dismantled an entire life before sunrise. No one needed to. As the plane lifted off, I reached into my bag, took out my phone, and powered it on one last time. 37 missed calls. 9 messages. I didn't open a single one. Instead, I went into settings. Changed my number. And just like that, they lost access. Porto smelled like rain, salt, and something frying in olive oil the second I stepped outside. Not perfume, not detergent. Real smells. Heavy ones. Honest ones. I stood there for a moment with my bag in hand, watching people move like they belonged to their own lives. No one was rushing toward me. No one was waiting for me to fix anything. It felt strange. Not lonely. Just unclaimed. The taxi driver said something in Portuguese I didn't understand, then switched to simple English. First time? Yes, I said. He nodded like that explained everything. My apartment was small, tucked between 2 old buildings with chipped blue tiles. Azulejos, I learned later. The stairwell echoed with footsteps that weren't mine. The door stuck a little when I turned the key, like it hadn't decided yet if I was allowed in. Inside, it was quiet. Clean, but not sterile. A narrow bed, a small table, a window that looked out over a street where laundry swayed between buildings like flags of ordinary lives. I set my bag down and just stood there. No list, no clock, no one calling my name. My phone buzzed. The new number. Only a few people had it, which meant I looked. My youngest. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. Mom? His voice was tight. Careful. I'm fine, I said before he could start. A pause. Then, where are you? Portugal. Silence. Not shock. Calculation. They're freaking out, he said. James is saying you've lost it. That something's wrong. He's already called Aunt Linda. Of course he had. And you? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. I told them to calm down. That wasn't an answer. I walked to the window, watched a woman across the street shake out a tablecloth like it owed her money. Did you know he was going to say that? I asked. He didn't play dumb. Yeah. There it was. Not a lie. Not quite honesty either. Just enough truth to clear his conscience without fully stepping into it. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. All right, I said. That's it? He asked, a little sharper now. You're just gonna disappear? I almost smiled. I didn't disappear, I said. I left. There's a difference. He heard it. You can't just cut people off like that, he said. That's not how families work. No, that's exactly how they work, when one person stops carrying everyone else. I'll talk to you again, I said, but not today. Mom? I ended the call, not angry, just done with that version of the conversation. I set the phone down and opened my notebook again. This time not for numbers, for memory. I started writing, not stories, not emotions. Facts. Dates when I paid tuition. Amounts for rent I helped with. The year I covered my son's first car. Then the second. The insurance that was supposed to be just for a few months. The time my daughter cried over a deposit she couldn't make, and how I wired it within the hour. Line after line, no drama, just evidence. Halfway through, I stopped. Something didn't sit right. I flipped back a few pages, checked an old transfer note I had copied down years ago. There it was. A comment attached to one of the payments. Handled. She doesn't need details. Not my words, his. I stared at it longer than I should have. That wasn't dependence, that was management. Of me. I closed the notebook slowly. Outside, someone laughed. A real laugh. Loud, unfiltered. Inside, I felt something shift again. Not pain this time. Precision. They didn't just rely on me. They had organized around me. And now, the system was gone. I didn't rush into anything the next morning. No dramatic decisions, no calls, no messages. I stepped outside and let the city hit me properly. Porto wasn't polished. That's what I liked about it. The sidewalks were uneven. The buildings leaned slightly like they'd grown tired but refused to fall, and every corner smelled different. Coffee, damp stone, grilled sardines, something sweet I couldn't name yet. Real life, not curated. I walked without a plan. That alone felt like rebellion. At a small cafe with 3 crooked tables outside, I ordered what the man behind the counter recommended. He handed me a strong espresso and something warm, flaky, dusted lightly with sugar. I later learned it was a pastel de nata, but at that moment it was just unfamiliar comfort. I sat there longer than necessary, watching people who weren't performing for anyone. No one was pretending to be successful. No one was negotiating attention. They just existed. My phone buzzed once on the table. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then again. And again. I flipped the phone over and muted it completely. Not today. Instead, I took out my notebook again. Not the financial one, the other pages, and wrote down what I was noticing. No one here needs me. No one here expects anything from me. I paused. That second line used to terrify me. Now it felt like oxygen. By midday, I had walked far enough that my legs reminded me I was 66, not 30. I found a small grocery shop, bought bread, cheese, and a bottle of something the owner insisted was very good local. I didn't argue. Back at the apartment, I opened the windows wide. The air carried voices from the street, dishes clinking somewhere, a radio playing low in another language. Life happening without asking permission. I ate slowly. No interruptions. No one asking for anything. Halfway through, I turned my phone back on. Mistake. Messages came in almost immediately. My daughter first. Mom, this is ridiculous. Call me. We need to talk like adults. My son. You can't just shut things down. I have responsibilities. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Not our responsibilities. His. Then another message came through. Different tone. My youngest. He told everyone you've been struggling mentally, that you're not thinking clearly. I didn't say anything. I stared at that one longer. Not because it surprised me, because it confirmed the pattern. Control the narrative. Position me as unstable. Make everything I do easier to dismiss. I set the phone down carefully. Then I laughed. Not loudly, not bitterly. Just once. After everything, 38 years of holding things together, they thought the best way to handle me leaving was to suggest I'd lost my mind. I stood up, walked to the sink, rinsed my plate, and dried it slowly. No shaking hands, no tears, just clarity tightening into something sharper. If they wanted to play that version of the story, fine. But I wasn't going to argue with it. I was going to outgrow it. I went back to the table, opened my notebook, and started a new page. Not evidence this time. Structure. What stays? What ends? What gets locked permanently? And for the first time, I didn't write it like I was asking permission. I wrote it like policy. Outside, the light shifted slightly, the kind that makes everything look a little more defined. Inside, I realized something I hadn't let myself think yet. I wasn't recovering from them. I was recalibrating without them. I moved from Porto to Lisbon 3 days later. Not because I had to, because I could. The train ride was quiet, smooth, the kind that lets your thoughts stretch out instead of pile up. I sat by the window and watched the landscape change, green fading into dustier tones, small towns passing like they had nothing to prove. No one on that train knew who I used to be. Good. Lisbon felt different the second I stepped off. Warmer, faster, still old, but sharper around the edges. The hills didn't ask permission from your knees either. I felt every step climbing up toward the apartment I'd rented near Alfama. Inside, the place was simple. White walls, a narrow balcony, and a view of rooftops stacked like uneven cards. Somewhere nearby, faint music drifted through the air. Photo again, slow and heavy, like it had something to confess. I set my bag down and didn't unpack right away. Instead, I took out the notebook, the real one. If part 4 was clarity, this was confirmation. I started going through everything properly now, not just memories, data, bank records I had saved copies of, old emails I forwarded to myself years ago, just in case, notes I had written in the margins of bills. Patterns started showing up fast. Too fast. My daughter hadn't just needed help occasionally, she had timed it. Always right before rent deadlines. Always with urgency. Always with just enough panic to bypass questions. My son, James, was worse. He hadn't been careless. He'd been consistent. Insurance payments that were supposed to last a couple months stretched into years. Small increases that went unmentioned. Requests framed like updates, not questions. And then I saw it. A transfer from 2 years ago. Amount higher than usual. Note attached. Handled. Told her it was necessary. Again, not my words. His. I leaned back slowly in the chair. That wasn't dependency. That was a system running quietly in the background, with me as the engine. And I hadn't even been allowed full visibility into it. I kept going. Another email thread. My daughter writing to someone, forwarded accidentally to me at the time, but I never paid attention back then. She'll cover it. She always does. Just give me a day. No hesitation, no doubt, certainty. I closed my eyes for a second, not to process emotion, to organize response. Because now it was clear. This wasn't 3 kids occasionally leaning on their mother. This was structure. Expectation. Exploitation dressed up as family. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered this time. Hello? Pause. Then my daughter's voice. How long are you planning to keep this up? Straight to it. No, are you okay? No, how are you? Just inconvenience. I'm not keeping anything up, I said calmly. You cut everything off without warning, she snapped. Do you have any idea what that does to people? I almost laughed. I do, I said. I've been absorbing it for 38 years. Silence. Sharp this time. Then she shifted tone. Mom, we can fix this. You don't have to make everything so extreme. There it was. The offer. Reset the system. Go back to normal. No, I said. Not loud, not emotional, just clean. Another pause. Longer. So that's it? She asked. For now, I said. Yes. You're being selfish. I looked out at the rooftops, sunlight hitting the tiles unevenly. No, I said quietly. I'm being finished. I ended the call, and this time, I didn't feel anything pull at me afterward. No guilt. No second guessing, just alignment. I went back to the notebook and turned to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote, Access removed. Then underneath, narrative control. Theirs. Outcome control. Mine. Outside, a tram rattled past, metal grinding lightly against tracks. Life moving. Without asking. Without waiting. I closed the notebook and finally unpacked my bag. Not because I was settling in, because I already had. I didn't sleep much that night in Lisbon. Not because I was anxious, because my mind had finally stopped avoiding things. There's a difference. By morning, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was structuring. I made coffee in the small kitchen, stronger than I usually drank it, and sat down with the notebook again. Not to reread, to finalize. 3 columns this time. What ends immediately. What remains closed. What requires legal separation. That third one sat heavier than the others. Because I knew something now I hadn't let myself admit before. Some of what they built on top of me wasn't just emotional. It was administrative. I opened my laptop, went through old folders I hadn't touched in years. Insurance documents, shared coverage agreements, emergency contact listings, co-signed forms I barely remembered signing because at the time, it was always framed as temporary, necessary, urgent. It always is. Until it isn't. One file stood out. My son's car insurance, still partially tied to me. Not directly obvious, but there. Layered. Convenient. I exhaled slowly. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I contacted a lawyer, not dramatically, not like in movies, just a clear email. I need a full review of any financial or legal ties between myself and my adult children. I want separation, complete. No story, no emotion. Facts. They replied faster than I expected. We scheduled a call. While I waited, my phone buzzed again. Different number. I almost didn't answer. Then I did. Mom? James. Of course. You're really doing this? He said. No greeting, no softness. I already did, I answered. You cut off everything. Insurance, transfers. Do you even understand what that does? I leaned back in the chair, looking at the light hitting the wall. I do, I said. I just stopped protecting you from it. He let out a sharp breath. This isn't how families work. You're right, I said. It's not how healthy ones do. Silence. Then his tone shifted, lower now, controlled. People are asking questions. That caught my attention. What people? A pause, then carefully. Doesn't matter. No, it did, because James never mentioned pressure unless it affected how he was seen. I said nothing. Let him fill it. You could have handled this differently, he continued. We didn't have to make this public. Public. There it was. Not concern. Reputation. I almost smiled. I didn't make anything public, I said. I just stopped participating. Another silence. This one longer. So what? You're just gone now? He asked. No, I said calmly. I'm just not available anymore. That landed. I could hear it, because availability had always been the real currency. Fine, he said finally. But don't expect things to just go back later. I don't, I said. And that, more than anything, ended the conversation. He hung up first. I didn't move for a few seconds. Then my laptop chimed. The lawyer. I joined the call. She was direct, efficient, no wasted language. We went through everything, connections I knew about, and a few I didn't. That's where it shifted again. Your name appears here, she said, as a secondary fallback contact on a financial obligation. I frowned. What obligation? She read it out. Not small, not temporary, and definitely not something I had agreed to knowingly. I felt it then. Not anger, something colder. Precision, turning into action. Can it be removed? I asked. Yes, she said, but it needs to be done properly. Then we do it properly. No hesitation, no delay. By the time the call ended, I had a process. Steps, timeline, control. I closed the laptop and sat there in the quiet apartment. Outside, Lisbon moved like it always did. Trams, voices, distant music. Inside, something had fully clicked into place. They didn't just expect me. They had built systems assuming I would always be there. And now, those systems were breaking. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. I picked up my notebook one last time and added a single line. Dependency exposed. Then I closed it. For the first time since I left, I didn't feel like I was reacting at all. I was ahead. The message came in just after noon. Not from my children, from someone who had been watching quietly the whole time. We should talk. You're not being told the full story. No name at first, just the number. I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots. Then, "Elaine, your neighbor, from back home." I leaned back slightly. Elaine didn't reach out unless something crossed a line. "Call me," I sent. She picked up on the first ring. "I wasn't sure if I should get involved," she started, voice low, careful. "But what they're saying about you, it's not right." I didn't interrupt. "Go on." There was a pause, like she was choosing how much to reveal. "Your son's been telling people you had some kind of episode," she said. "That you left suddenly, confused, not thinking straight. He's framing it like he's trying to protect you." Of course he was. "And my daughter?" I asked. "She's backing it," Elaine said. "Saying you've been off for a while, that you've been making strange decisions." I nodded slowly. Narrative control, exactly as expected. "And people believe that?" I asked. Another pause. "Some do," she admitted. "But not everyone." "Who doesn't?" "You'd be surprised," she said. "People notice patterns even when they don't say anything." That mattered, not emotionally, strategically. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Her answer came quick this time. Because I've seen you for years. You don't fall apart. You hold everything together, and suddenly you leave, and they're acting like victims? She exhaled sharply. It doesn't add up. No, it didn't. Thank you, I said. I thought you should know, she replied. Also, there's something else. I waited. I overheard your son talking last week, she said. Before your party. He wasn't joking when he asked you that question. My grip tightened slightly on the phone. I know, I said. He said, and I remember this exactly. It's better if we do it in front of people. She won't say no that way. There it was. Not suspicion. Confirmation. Public pressure as a tactic. Silence stretched between us for a second. Then I asked, did anyone push back? No, she said quietly. Of course not. They laughed, she added. That part didn't sting anymore. It clarified. All right, I said. That's enough. You sure? She asked. Yes. And it was. Because I didn't need more. I had the full picture now. When the call ended, I didn't sit still. I moved. Straight to the table. Notebook open. This time, not reflection. Assembly. I started organizing everything. Dates of payments, messages, patterns. Now, context. Now, intent. This wasn't just about what they took. It was about how they planned to keep taking it. I created a clean structure. Chronological, undeniable. Then I opened my laptop and started backing everything up properly. Cloud, drive, copies, redundancy, not paranoia, preparation. My phone buzzed again. Message from my youngest. They're saying you're not coming back. I typed back, not the way they expect. He didn't reply immediately. Good. Let him sit with that. Outside, Lisbon carried on like nothing had shifted. But inside, everything had. Because now, I wasn't just aware of what they'd built around me. I understood how they'd defend it, and more importantly, how to dismantle it, piece by piece. Clean, visible, final. I didn't call him right away. I let a full day pass. Not as a test, more like a filter. People say different things when they don't get immediate access to you. The noise settles, and what's left is usually closer to the truth. By the next evening, Lisbon had softened into that golden light that makes everything look more honest than it really is. I stepped out onto the narrow balcony, phone in hand, and dialed. He picked up on the second ring. Mom? No tension this time, just uncertainty. Are you alone? I asked. Yeah. Good. A pause. Then I said it clean. This is your one chance to speak without them in the room, so don't manage it. Don't soften it. Just tell me the truth. Silence. Long enough that I could hear him thinking. I didn't stop it, he said finally. Not what I asked, but closer. I know, I replied. Try again. Another pause. Longer. I knew what James was doing, he said. Not everything, but enough. The insurance thing, the money. How he talks about it when you're not there. I didn't react. Go on. He doesn't see it like taking, he continued. He sees it like it's already his. Like you'd give it anyway, so asking isn't really asking. There it was, the mindset, not guilt, entitlement. And you? I asked. Silence again. I used it too, he admitted. Not like him. But I didn't say no either. That mattered more than excuses. Why not? I asked. His answer came quick this time. Because it worked. Simple, honest, uncomfortable. I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see it. That's the only honest thing you've said so far, I replied. He exhaled, like something in him had finally dropped. They're trying to fix it now, he added. But not really, just enough to make you come back. Of course. What does fix it mean? I asked. Adjusting things, he said, not asking as directly, making it look better. I almost smiled. Same system, different packaging. Listen carefully, I said. I'm not coming back to that version of this family. He didn't argue. That surprised me. I know, he said. And for the first time, it didn't sound like strategy. It sounded like understanding. Good, I replied. Another pause. Then, quieter. Are you coming back at all? I looked out over the rooftops, the light fading now, shadows stretching across the city. Yes, I said, but not for what they think. That was enough. I ended the call before it turned into something softer. Because softness was the old system, and I wasn't rebuilding that. I went back inside, closed the balcony door, and sat down at the table. Laptop open, notebook beside it. Now the pieces moved into place. Return flight, booked. Timing, not shared. Meetings, structured. Not emotional conversations. Controlled ones. I drafted a short outline. Who I would see first. Who I wouldn't see alone. What would be said and what wouldn't. No improvisation, no reacting, execution. My phone buzzed once more. Message from my daughter. We need to talk when you get back. Not if. When. I stared at it for a second, then replied, We will, on my terms. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No answer. Good. Outside, the city kept moving like nothing was about to happen, but something was, because this time, I wasn't walking back into the same structure. I was walking in with the full blueprint, and every weak point marked. I didn't tell anyone I was back. The plane landed early, just after sunrise, the kind of gray light that makes everything look unfinished. I moved through the airport the same way I left it, quiet, unnoticed, carrying only what was mine. No calls, no messages, no announcement. The taxi ride home felt shorter this time, not because of distance, because there was nothing pulling me backward anymore. The city looked exactly the same. Same intersections, same storefronts, same people pretending nothing ever really changes. But I had. When the car stopped in front of my house, I didn't get out immediately. I sat there for a few seconds, watching the front door like it might react to me. It didn't. Good. I paid, stepped out, and walked in without hesitation. The key still worked. Inside, the air felt stale. Not dirty, just used. Like a place that had been lived in without being respected. Shoes near the entrance that weren't mine. A jacket thrown over a chair. Someone had been comfortable here. Too comfortable. I closed the door behind me slowly. No noise. No warning. Then I walked into the kitchen. My son was there. James. He froze when he saw me. Not shock. Calculation. Fast. Automatic. Mom? No smile. No hug. Just the word. I set my bag down by the wall. You made yourself at home, I said calmly, glancing at the table. Empty takeout containers. A coffee cup I didn't own. We were worried, he replied quickly. You just disappeared. I didn't disappear, I said. I stopped responding. He didn't like that. I could see it. Look, he started, stepping forward slightly, tone shifting into something rehearsed. Things got out of hand. That night, it wasn't supposed to. It was planned, I cut in. Not loud, but precise. He stopped, just for a second. Enough. That's not, he tried. Elaine heard you, I said, before the party. Silence. There it was again. That small gap where truth leaks in before control catches up. You're really taking her word over your own son? He asked. Deflection. Expected. I'm taking patterns over performance, I said. That landed harder. Because he knew I was right. He changed tactics. Fine, he said, jaw tightening slightly. Even if that's true, you didn't have to go nuclear. You shut everything down overnight. Yes. No explanation. No apology. Just confirmation. That affects people, he pressed. It always did, I replied. You just weren't the one absorbing it before. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. This isn't sustainable, he said. We need to figure out a system that works. There it was. System. Still thinking in structure, just adjusting variables. No, I said. He blinked. That system is over. Silence. Heavy now. Different. Because this time, there was no opening to step back into. You're serious, he said. Not a question. Recognition. Yes. Another pause. Then quieter, more controlled. Then we need to talk about what happens next. Finally, something real. We will, I said. But not like this. I picked up my bag, moved past him without waiting for permission. Tomorrow, I added. All of you, together. He turned slightly, watching me. And if we don't agree? He asked. I stopped at the doorway. Didn't turn around. That's already been accounted for. I walked down the hall, opened my bedroom door and stepped inside. Closed it behind me. For the first time since I left, I was back in the center of it. But nothing about it felt the same. Because this time, I wasn't the foundation. I was the one deciding what still stands. They were all there by the time I walked into the dining room the next evening. No one sat at the head of the table. Good. That role was finished. James stood near the window, arms crossed, already in position, like this was a negotiation he intended to win. My daughter sat with her legs crossed, posture controlled, face set in that polite expression she used when she wanted to appear reasonable. My youngest stayed slightly back, not hiding, but not stepping forward either. I didn't sit immediately. I looked at them first, all of them, 38 years in that one glance. Then I pulled out a chair and sat down. No rush, no tension, just presence. Let's not waste time, I said. James nodded once, stepping in first. Good. Then let's be practical, he said. Things escalated. We all agree on that. But there's no reason we can't stabilize this and move forward. Stabilize. He still thought this was a temporary disruption. What exactly are we stabilizing? I asked. Our structure, he replied. Support, responsibilities, just with better communication. I held his gaze. That structure is over. Flat. Final. My daughter leaned forward slightly. Mom, nobody's saying things go back exactly the same, she said smoothly. But cutting everything off like that, it's extreme. We can adjust. Make it fair. Fair. I almost smiled. Define fair, I said. She hesitated. Just for a second. That was enough. Shared responsibility, she said. You helping where needed, but with boundaries. Helping. Still framed like I was part of the system. No, I said. Silence dropped heavier this time. Not confusion anymore. Resistance. James stepped in again, sharper now. You're acting like we've been using you, he said. I didn't respond. I opened my bag instead, took out the folder, set it on the table. That changed the room. Slowly, I slid the first page forward. Tuition, I said. Year 1 through 4, covered. Next page. Rent support, multiple years, not occasional. Next. Insurance, not temporary. Next. Emergency transfers. Patterned. No emotion in my voice, just sequence, just fact. My daughter shifted in her chair. James didn't move. I kept going. Then I placed one page in front of him specifically. The note. Handled. Told her it was necessary. He stared at it. Didn't touch it. Didn't deny it. Just saw it. That's yours, I said. Quiet. Precise. My daughter looked between us. What is that supposed to mean? She asked quickly. It means, I said, this wasn't informal. Now I looked at all of them again. This was structured. Silence. No one interrupted. Because now they understood. This wasn't a conversation, it was exposure. My youngest finally spoke. It's true, he said. Soft, but clear. James turned his head sharply toward him. Don't, he started. No, I said. Not louder, but heavier. This is the part where nobody manages anything. That stopped him. I leaned back slightly. You didn't just accept help, I continued. You built around it. You planned around it. And when I didn't respond the way you expected, I looked directly at James. You prepared to pressure me in public. That landed hardest because it couldn't be reframed. My daughter looked at him now, really looked, not supportive, evaluating. James exhaled slowly, then finally spoke. Fine, he said. Maybe things went further than they should have. Not an apology, still controlled, still minimizing. But that doesn't mean you walk away from your family, he added. There it was, the last card. Family. I nodded once. You're right, I said. That surprised them. Then I continued. I'm not walking away from family. I let that sit for a second. Then, I'm walking away from dependency. Silence. Clean. Irreversible. My daughter's expression shifted now. Not defensive. Uncertain? Because this wasn't the version of me she knew how to argue with. What happens now? She asked. Finally, the right question. I closed the folder, set my hand on top of it. What happens now, I said calmly, is that everything you built expecting access to me ends. No one spoke, because they understood exactly what that meant. I'm not negotiating support, I continued. I'm not resuming anything. I'm not stepping back into that role. I looked at each of them once more. If there's a relationship left here, I said, it won't be built on what I provide. I stood up, slow, deliberate. And if there isn't, I picked up the folder. That's already been accounted for. No raised voice, no emotion, just conclusion. Behind me, no one tried to stop me. Because for the first time, there was nothing left to leverage. No one followed me out of that room. That told me everything I needed to know. If there had still been leverage, they would have used it. A raised voice, a last attempt, something emotional to pull me back into position. But there was nothing left. I walked into the kitchen, set the folder down on the counter, and poured myself a glass of water like it was any other evening. My hands were steady. No adrenaline, no shaking, just done. A few seconds later, I heard movement behind me. Not James. My daughter. She stopped at the doorway. You're serious, she said. Not dramatic, not accusing, just confirming. Yes. She stepped in slowly, like she wasn't sure what version of me she was approaching. You're not helping at all anymore? She asked. No. That word landed heavier now than anything I'd said before, because this time, she believed it. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely, not defensive, thinking. That changes things, she said quietly. Yes, I replied. Another pause. Then, more carefully, for everyone. I looked at her. That was always true, I said. You just didn't feel it before. She didn't argue. That was new. I didn't think of it like that, she admitted. I know. Silence settled again, but this time it wasn't tense. It was unfamiliar. Because for the first time, she wasn't negotiating. She was recalculating. James won't take this well, she said. I'm not managing James anymore, I answered. That line drew a clear boundary. Not just financially, structurally. She nodded once, slow, then pushed herself off the counter. I'll figure my part out, she said. Not asking, not expecting, just stating. That was the first honest sentence I'd heard from her in years. Good, I said. She hesitated for a second longer, then left. I stayed where I was, finished my water, then picked up the folder again and walked down the hall. James was still in the dining room, same position, same posture. But something had shifted. Less control, more calculation. "You're making a mistake," he said as I stepped in. "No," I replied. "I'm correcting one." His jaw tightened. "You think this makes you strong?" he asked. I shook my head slightly. "This has nothing to do with strength." I placed a single sheet from the folder on the table in front of him. Legal notice, preliminary, clean, professional. "This is the start of removing my name from everything it shouldn't be attached to," I said. He looked at it, didn't touch it. "You're overcomplicating this," he said. "No," I replied calmly. "I'm finishing it properly." That word again. Properly. No shortcuts, no emotional reversals. Just closure done with structure. He exhaled slowly, then leaned forward slightly. "And after that?" he asked. "What exactly are we to you?" There it was. Not money. Position. I met his eyes. "You'll find out based on how you act without access," I said. "No anger. No punishment. Just consequence." That unsettled him more than anything else, because it removed the last predictable rule he knew how to work with. I picked up the rest of the folder, turned, and walked out without waiting for a response. Back in my room, I closed the door quietly behind me and sat on the edge of the bed. No relief, no triumph, just alignment. Everything was now where it should have been years ago. Clear, separated, real. I reached for my phone, opened a new note, and wrote one final line for myself. No access, no leverage, no distortion. Then I locked the screen. Not because I was avoiding anything, but because there was nothing left to manage. I left the house 2 days later. Not quietly this time, not dramatically either, just visibly. One suitcase by the door, not large, not heavy, enough for movement, not for storage. The rest of what mattered had already been handled. Documents, accounts, structure, direction. James didn't come out of his room. My daughter stayed in the kitchen, pretending to be busy. Only my youngest stood near the hallway when I picked up the suitcase. He didn't block me. Didn't try to stop me. "Are you coming back?" he asked. Not the same question as before. This one had weight. I looked at him for a second. "Not to this version," I said. He nodded slowly, like he finally understood what that meant. Not absence. Change. "All right," he said quietly, and stepped aside. That was enough. Outside, the air felt different, not lighter, clearer. I didn't look back at the house, not because I was angry, but because I wasn't tied to it anymore. The taxi ride felt familiar now, not like escape, like direction. At the airport, everything moved clean. Check-in, security, boarding, no hesitation, no second thoughts waiting in corners, just forward. When the plane took off, I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't check messages. I didn't replay conversations. There was nothing left unresolved. By the time I landed back in Portugal, the shift was complete. Not emotionally, structurally. I wasn't someone who had left. I was someone who had relocated my life. Completely. The apartment this time wasn't temporary. I signed properly, long-term, keys in my hand, name on the contract, no shared access, no fallback connections. Mine. Days passed differently there. Not empty, not busy, intentional. Morning coffee on the balcony. Walking streets that didn't recognize me and didn't need to. Buying what I wanted without calculating who else might need something first. Evenings with quiet conversations, sometimes with strangers who didn't ask what I could provide, only who I was. And for the first time in decades, that question had an answer. Weeks later, my phone buzzed. One message. James. I looked at it. Didn't open it right away, not out of fear, out of choice. When I finally did, it was short. No demands, no structure. Just, we're figuring things out. I stared at it for a moment. Then locked the phone. Good. That's exactly what should have happened from the beginning. No reply. Not needed. I stepped out onto the balcony, the evening air carrying that same mix of salt and warmth I had felt on my first day. Only now, it felt like mine. Not borrowed, not temporary. Earned. And if there was one thing I understood clearly now, it was this. I didn't lose my family. I removed myself from a system that required me to disappear so it could function, and I chose not to disappear anymore. Thanks for staying till the end. I'll say it simply. Respect isn't negotiable, even with your own children. If I were in her place, I would have done the same, just sooner. If this hit you, subscribe, like, and tell me what you would have done.